Hello, Avioners. Welcome to A Taste of Adventure, a 6-part series where we're jumping on video calls with top chefs from the Feast On Network to talk about their favorite recipes, their favorite restaurants, and their favorite local products. Thanks so much for joining us today through the Avion collection, an ever-growing catalog of exclusive value, insider tips, and unique experiences just for Avioners. My name is Agatha, and I'm joining you today from my home kitchen. Through my work with the Culinary Tourism Alliance, I've spent the last 10 years exploring the undiscovered parts of Canada, meeting with chefs, with farmers and artisans, trying to figure out what makes Canadian food so special. One of the programs that we created here in our home province of Ontario is called Feast On. Feast On is a way for chefs across Ontario to get better connected with Ontario food. And in turn, it's a way for you to make better restaurant choices across the province. I'm really excited to dig into Indigenous foodways with Chef Billy Alexander, who's joining us from the traditional homelands and territory of Caldwell First Nation today. Billy has cooked across Canada from coast to coast to coast, celebrating and sharing Indigenous history and culture through Indigenous foodways. He recently moved back to Ontario from Alberta, where he spent the last 6 years to be the executive chef and culinary advisor for Caldwell First Nation in Leamington. Hello, Billy.
Hi, Agatha. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really excited to explore your recipe today with you. This is going to be a good one, I think.
Yeah, I'm really excited to share with you and be able to share my culture with every plate, every word, and yeah, thanks for having me.
When I think about Indigenous food, I mean, I'm seeing it more and more in articles. More and more chefs are experimenting with it. But what is Indigenous food? Is that something we need to unpack?
Yeah, I think, when we're looking at Indigenous food, we're often looking at it expecting it to be ownership of ingredients, when really Indigenous food is a much larger concept. It's a relationship between us and the land, a relationship between our creator, Mother Nature, and what was provided to us as gifts. So it really involves about respect, being stewards of the land, and what we did with our original ingredients to survive off our local terroir. And that's why Indigenous cuisine is different wherever you go all across Canada, because it's really about that relationship.
Amazing. I read somewhere that you referred to the land as our original grocery store. I think that's so beautiful. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
When we are children, we have the most active imaginations. And from when I am young, and most Indigenous people are young, we're actually taught that we're supposed to be able to walk out our back door and make a salad. We're supposed to be able to work with our relationship with the land. I challenge us now to use our imagination, walk out your back door and remember what it used to look like before all the buildings. That was our grocery store. It was what were gifts, how we provided to ourselves and our survival through our community by our ability to not work for the land, but work with the land to be able to provide ourselves with what we needed.
Amazing. So what would the first step in this recipe be?
So our first step is going to be involved with our sweetgrass and blueberry compost. And what we've got is our sweetgrass is a traditional medicine for us, not often used for cooking. But what we have is it's used for our medicinal, and we get this ability of this beautiful sweetgrass. It smells fantastic, almost like a vanilla cinnamon. Cinnamon is spelled, but when we heat this, it's when it really starts to come out. So the first aspect of this is torch. We have our light torch, and because sweetgrass is quite dry, we're just going to hold the flame further away and torch it. And what's great about this is you can do this recipe. We're only torching it to activate the flavors and the heat. And once we actually turn off our torch, as we do a light release, we're actually going to put this into our pot with our blueberries, and we're going to stew this and let that heat continue to come out, and it really gives it a flavor. The trick to this is you can make it a day ahead, you can make it a month ahead. The sweetgrass, the longer it sits in your compote, the more flavor it's going to get. You get this beautiful flavor, and I can actually see still chunks of the sweetgrass still in it.
Is sweetgrass something you can buy, or is this something that you find in your environment?
So sweetgrass traditionally grows in our environments closer to swampy areas with it, but it has become available now. If you're looking on Indigenous websites and you're searching with it, it has become accessible now for people to buy it. And there's actually a couple of organizations that ship right across Canada. So it is accessible. I prefer the traditional routes of going out and foraging it, but that is a learned skill set as well.
That looks amazing, and I can't wait to try finding sweetgrass, but also torching sweetgrass myself. So I would hazard a guess that not a lot of people watching today have cooked with elk before. Can you tell me a little bit about what that looks like? Could we use other proteins? Elk sounds really special.
Elk is a very, very special dish for us. You can use other proteins. You could use bison. You could use, if you've cooked a pork tenderloin before, you could cook an elk tenderloin. But why it's so special is because of what it means to us in the significance of who we are as Indigenous people. Elk for us is an ingredient, it's a food, but it's also a spiritual aspect to us. It is a clan protector. It is considered the king of the forest. And it is also considered a protector of women and children. So this method that I've chosen to cook with it, I'm lightly dusting with our rub. I'm choosing a one method pan sear, where as I pat in my rub, I have my skillet going and I have my oil. This is a really quick, what I love about this is it's a really quick 1-2 minute sear on each side, and then you keep it in the same pan and put it in the oven and it does all the work for you. So you got that nice quick sear already. Flipping over, and then the accessibility of it with it is venison is a great substitute with it. It is not as lean as elk, but both are going to fall apart whenever we're cutting into it. You barely need a knife, but I'm a chef, so I love them.
Amazing. That I wish I had smell-o-vision going on right now, because I bet you that smells absolutely amazing.
Between this and the compost for the sweetgrass, you find very few better smelling kitchens. So I'm just taking this and I'm going to put it in the oven, and then we have it in the oven for about 10 minutes.
So you also mentioned three sisters in your recipe, and this is something we hear a lot when we talk about Indigenous foodways across Canada and the world, to be honest. They have a really special place in the traditions for many Indigenous communities and cultures. What do they mean to you?
So our three sisters are our corns, beans, and squash in the literal sense. But as a part of our community, Three Sisters has served many, many different priorities. They've been how we've taught our lessons from generation to generation. They've often been an explanation of lessons learned and how our land actually came to be. So the actual geographical makeup is often in Alberta. Three Sisters are the mountain range on the way to Banff. And that's a really good example of how it can geographically explain what they are. But Three Sisters for me as a chef hold a special place. They actually represent our food we survived off of, as well as how it was possible, some of the original gardening techniques and horticulture techniques, and how it became evident to us that when we plant foods and operate in the same way that we do as a community, we're better together than we are separate. We have proven that these individual vegetables actually grow better together than they do if you were to plant own separate patches of them. And that is how these traditional ingredients have actually shaped modern day growing techniques in our garden.
Wow, that's a lot of weight to put on a couple of vegetables. I like it.
It really is incredibly important to know where your food comes from. And I find this to be, my food comes from a lot more than just the land, and it serves many more purposes than just being an ingredient.
Tell us a little bit about what you did with these Three Sisters. I see you've made quick use of a spiralizer there.
Yeah, it's a nice way to do quick cooking. It's also a fancier way to present. And what we found out with it is, you can pick up cheap or cost-effective. You can pick up cost-effective methods in spiralizing to be able to get it. It gives you height on your plate, and it gives us a nice color contrast between our squash. Because they're so thin, you actually just need a 2-minute cook time on them, and then we start getting really nice color. We have our oil. Now we're going to add in a little bit of our wildflower honey, giving it a nice caramelization. And then we're just going to top off with some of our spiralized beets. So though these are not a part of our Three Sisters, they are a root vegetable. I always say things that grow together go together. And this gives a nice little color, great through our fall and winter months. And you add a beautiful color, texture, nice corn, oil, and our honey.
Beautiful. The Polish girl in me is really excited that there are beets on this plate. I'm thinking some kind of like Indigenous food, Polish food fusion menu coming up soon between us. I'm feeling the vibe. There's a lot of overlap.
There is a lot of overlap, and you actually see in the traditional farming methods and really love and care for traditional Indigenous food actually is a natural fusion with a lot of ingredients. And that's why I love it so much, because it's not an Indigenous or, it's an Indigenous and it's how we complement together and extend our communities. So we've cooked our elk in the oven at 350 degrees. I say 7 to 10 minutes, but it depends how big your elk really is. If it's of the thinner, adjust that time. The really important step is to letting your elk rest. So after it's come out of the oven, I let it rest for approximately 10 minutes, just to let a lot of the natural juices that are in it come back out. And that makes the meat as tender as possible.
It looks delicious. So show us how to plate this beautiful dish.
With pleasure. So we've got our nice board. Again, even my plating comes from the nature. It's being served on a cedar board here in terms of our slicing. And then my plate is nice, large, straight from the land. So what we're going to look to do is we're going to start with our roasted garlic. One of the nice things you're going to notice about our roasted garlic, I love it, comes right out of the oven. It's hot. You can eat it with a spoon. And it's topped off with our natural salt, pepper, but also another one of our traditional medicines being our sage. Crispy sage over the top as it goes into the oven, nice and soft and creamy. Then, while my meat was resting, is when I finished off our Three Sisters dish. Cooked in the pan, it's nice and hot. You see that beautiful color that's coming out. And we're gonna try and build this nice and high. That's the advantages of going with our spiralized. We got this beautiful color. And then of course, I always keep my spoon because the things that are hard to pick up are our corn. And I like those right on top. We got that nice, beautiful color. And now we get to go into slicing our elk. I like on a slight angle. Make sure your knife is nice and sharp. You can see we're at a perfect medium. That is about the doneness that I would go. I would go medium rare to medium at the most, because it's very, very tender. And I cut about 1/2 inch medallions. I'm going to top off with a little bit of our blueberry and sweetgrass compote. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to lay my elk. Beautiful.
That looks beautiful, Billy. Watching you plate this dish just makes me realize how much I miss dining in restaurants. Do you have any tips you can share while you finish this beautiful plate on how to recreate that experience at home?
You know, when I go to a restaurant, I really think about the company that I'm enjoying. So if we're looking to imitate what we're doing at a restaurant, I think we should turn off our phones. I think we should turn off our TV. And advice that I would give for everybody to do, if you have nothing to talk about, really slow down when you're eating, enjoy this meal, and think of ways to talk about the food you're eating, what you like. I put so much thought into my food as to if I really enjoy it. And when I eat fast, I never get a chance to do that. So I would say slow down, eliminate the distractions, enjoy your company, and turn off your TV and your phone.
That is very, very good advice, Billy. So you finished off with some details on that plate. Tell me what you did there.
So I just put a little bit to keep it on the bottom of our blueberry compote. I added a little bit more because I honestly cannot get enough of this compote. And it complements really well the natural acidity and sweetness. I topped it off with a little flat leaf parsley. And then I have an indigenous tea that is all dried leaves, sage, chamomile, that I just scrump over the top with our dried sage. Adds a little bit more texture. And again, another example of taking everything from the land. And then you probably noticed me pour something on it. All of my rested juice that came back out off my plate, it's still flavor, but it affects how it was tenderized the meat. I actually poured that back over as well. And it's my idea of creating this whole food. Everything that went into the food comes out of the food and goes back into the food.
Oh my goodness. I can taste the terroir as you describe this dish and all the various components. I wish I was eating it with you right now. So before we go, I just want to say that you have this innate ability to take your guests on a journey through food and conversation. This has been such a pleasure, but you're not off the hook yet. Tell me then, when you're able to do so, where's your journey taking you next?
I think I've gone as far out west. I'm originally from Ontario, and I'd like to go to PI. I would like to spend some time with these cultures within Canada. And for me, being those closest to another aspect of major water and seeing the traditions and the way those were inspired to live off the land, I'm going out east.
Amazing. I'm probably coming with you because it sounds like it's going to be a really good time. Thank you so much for joining us today, Billy, and for sharing your stories. I can't wait to come and dig deeper into your vision at Caldwell First Nation. It sounds like one of the most special places in the works in Ontario. And again, just thank you so much for giving us access to Indigenous foodways in a new, unique, and accessible way. This was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Agatha. It's been my pleasure as well to share our story. We encourage travel. We encourage people coming to see us and experience what we do. And in my culture, it's customary to incorporate our language. So of the Caldwell people, the traditional Anishinaabe-Moin, I would like to say thank you to you. And then we do this by saying miigwech. So miigwech, thank you for having me.
Miigwech, Billy. Thanks again for joining us through the Avion collection. If you'd like to learn more about Feast On, we encourage you to explore OntarioCulinary.com. And of course, for more Taste of Adventure episodes, head to rbcrewards.com/Avion collection.